And hello. Thursday, May 22nd, 2025, recording time. Houstonic.live, episode 280.d, or 280. If you are decimal, 280.13, corresponding to chapter 13 of the book Germs, and this is episode number 1261. And thank you for still being there for the series. The 280 series is the audiobook, the narration, and along also the deep dive of the book Germs, the September 7th or 9th, 2001 book. It's the publication date. Titled Germs, Biological Weapons, and America's Secret War by Judith Miller, Stephen Engelberg, and William Broad. In this series, we have one episode in the 280 series, which corresponds to each chapter. And to make it as easy as possible, we have the episode IDs correspond to the chapter ID, at least for the first 13. And this is the last of the 13 chapters. This exercise started off probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago right now, thinking that it was going to be a simple exercise of taking the Amazon Audible audiobook, which is captured in a fantastic professional voice, which rivals mine. And I thought it would simply be playing it and capturing the audio and then being able to do other things as I listened to it and as you were able to enjoy it and so on. And along the way, we realized that a large portion of the actual physical book, which I have a PDF copy of it, which you can download off HoustonITS.com or Houstonic.live. Click on that little books icon up above or in the site navigation, and you'll see it there in the list. 30 to 35% of the book was missing from the Amazon Audible audiobook. So initially, I thought maybe I just have to read in a missing paragraph or so here or there. And it turned out to be an extensive exercise. The completed project is going to be the only available full narration of this critical book, this book of historical significance. The book is historical significance because it's not written to control a narrative after the fact. It is written to project and to drive a narrative before all the events happened, and the events didn't happen as it projected. Hence, this book gives you daylight to the cracks that most books don't. Most books, it's just a cover story. Almost everything that's been written about, for example, the JFK assassination, is a cover story. There's very little actual deep dives out there, genuine deep dives. Hey, this is to prepare people, and the events that it suggested didn't happen as they expected. And much has been learned, and now with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, this book is one of the most valuable books to understand the full motivations and what everyone's mindset was going into 2001, the concerns about terrorism, biological terrorism, etc., vaccines, anthrax vaccines, DNA vaccines, data collection, Human Genome Project, etc. All truths which are not available almost anywhere else. And this book also gives you powerful insights onto both the other events, such as West Nile virus outbreak and so on, maybe even the first Gulf War, but also COVID-19. Because many of the people who have driven the narrative or controlled the narrative for COVID-19 are also in this book, directly or indirectly. And at the moment, still, and it's not my decision, it's other people's decisions. Mainstream media, alt media, they've all made a decision to allow me to have a monopoly on the most valuable asset out there. Now, I'm not saying everything in the book is true. Just because something is in a book or written, that doesn't mean it's true, but it's true that it was written. And the context, what it was written and who wrote it, and so on, is valuable. So, now that we are finally in the last chapter, I'm hopeful that the book, the Amazon Audible audiobook, will include most of the narration for the chapter. So, without any further ado, let's go.
Conclusion. Is the threat of germ weapons real or exaggerated? Our answer is both. At key points in recent years, senior officials overstated the danger of biological attack, harming their cause with hyperbole. In most conditions, a 5-pound bag of anthrax could kill many people, but not as many as half the inhabitants of Washington, D.C. Similarly, political leaders undermined their credibility by asserting that a biological attack against the United States was inevitable in the next few years, a matter of not if but when. No such certainty exists. Germ weapons played a minor role in 20th century warfare and terrorism when scientists invented new means of slaughter on an industrial scale, from atomic bombs to gas chambers. Yet most nations chose not to use the germ weapons when they went to war. Terrorists have blown up buildings, hijacked scores of airplanes, and murdered indiscriminately in the past 3 decades. Only a handful of groups have attempted biological attacks, and fewer still have succeeded. Thus far, the Rajneeshis germ assault on the citizen of the Dalles, Oregon, in 1984 has proven to be an anomaly. Nonetheless, we conclude that the threat of germ weapons is real and rising, driven by scientific discoveries and political upheavals around the world. As Aum Shinrikyo's failed efforts suggest, the crucial ingredient in a successful biological attack is not advanced laboratory equipment or virulent microbes alone, but knowledge. Such expertise is increasingly available. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, thousands of scientists skilled in biological warfare found themselves unemployed or penniless. The demise of South Africa's apartheid system and Iraq's defeat in the Gulf War have also added to the talent pool from which weapons scientists can be recruited. Drugs and vaccines are now made throughout the world, giving many nations the ability to manufacture germ weapons. It took the United States and the Soviet Union more than a decade of trial and error to master the secrets in the 1950s. 3 decades later, Iraqi scientists learned how to make thousands of gallons of anthrax and botulinum in just a few years. The contrast to nuclear weapons illustrates why many call germ weapons the poor man's atom bomb. A nation that obtains plans for a crude nuclear device is at the beginning of a complex technical challenge that requires staggering, easily detectable investments in mines, factories, and nuclear reactors. But scientists like Bill Patrick or Ken Alabek say they could teach a terrorist group how to make devastating germ weapons from a few handfuls of backyard dirt and some widely available lab equipment. The emergence of the United States as the world's most powerful nation has made biological attack more likely. Adversaries that resent America's global dominance, envy its wealth, or fear its overwhelming military power can fight back most effectively with unconventional weapons. The attack on the USS Cole in October 2000 showed how the seemingly powerless can strike a devastating military blow. A modern warship was crippled and nearly sunk by a dinghy packed with explosives and detonated by suicide bombers. In the coming years, those willing to die for their cause may well choose instead to become smallpox carriers or Marburg martyrs. The pace of scientific advance has also intensified the germ threat. Cohen and Boyer's pioneering work a quarter century ago helped give scientists new tools to improve crops and cure disease. But genetic manipulation can also be exploited to disorient, maim, and kill. No one can predict the recombinant future. But for now it appears that the genetic revolution may produce few killers of the sort found in the Cobra event, few agents such as brain pox. In real life, the most likely danger is that classic agents, the so-called oldie moldies, will be turned into custom pathogens that can defeat drugs, antidotes, and vaccines. The spread of recombinant knowledge through scientific exchanges and commerce has given even modestly skilled scientists the means to create havoc. In a decade or two, terrorists may no longer need to hire their own germ experts. The threat is magnified by a unique feature of germ weapons: uncertainty. Explosive bombs leave few doubts about their toll, but in a biological attack, city officials would not immediately know the source and nature of the outbreak or the true number of victims. The authorities would be forced to assume the worst, Josh Lederberg has argued, and strive to protect as many people as possible, inevitably deepening panic. The world's response to the growing dangers of germ weapons has fallen far short of what is needed. The 1972 treaty was a useful step, cementing an international consensus that this class of weapons is morally heinous. The subsequent conduct of the Soviet Union, Iraq, and South Africa, all of which signed the pact and then flagrantly violated it, underscores its inherent weaknesses. We believe that the recent effort to strengthen the treaty by providing some means of enforcement should be pursued. A balance can be struck between the need to protect legitimate research and the imperative of investigating suspected cheaters. The world's experience with Iraq clearly shows the limits of international inspections, but there is merit in reinforcing the moral taboos associated with germ weapons, as well as in raising the practical and political costs of building biological bombs.
And they decided to leave the sentence out regarding Saddam Hussein. It reads, Iraq kicked its germ efforts into high gear shortly after the world shrugged off Saddam Hussein's chemical attack on Kurdish civilians.
Leading scientists have quietly begun debating whether genetic engineers and other practitioners of the new biology should adopt their own version of the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. Such a step, while mostly symbolic, would help researchers become more sensitive to the ethical consequences of their work. In recent years, the world's nations have created international tribunals to prosecute war crimes. We believe the weight of international law should be brought to bear on those who traffic in biological weapons, as Matthew Messelson and others have suggested. Closer international cooperation is also needed to limit the sales of deadly pathogens by germ banks. The United States wisely tightened its rules on such sales in 1996 after a right-wing survivalist attempted to buy plague germs from the American Type Culture Collection, the same company that had sold anthrax to Iraq in the late 1980s. We recognize that the global fight against infectious diseases requires the free exchange of dangerous germs among scientists, but once again, a balance must be struck. Each nation should also enact tougher laws, as the United States has done. Ma Anand Sheela, a leader of the Rajneeshi cult convicted on charges of assault, attempted murder, arson, and poisoning hundreds of people in Oregon, was released from prison in 1988 after serving only 29 months. Sheela subsequently moved to Switzerland and began a new career as a nursing home operator. Today, the punitive measures that Congress passed mean such a crime would likely earn a much longer sentence. The Clinton administration made a real effort to confront the germ threat. Several of its initiatives deserve praise. After visiting facilities like Vector and Stepnogorsk, we conclude that the benefits of cooperative programs with the former Soviet Union far outweigh the potential dangers. Such programs, of course, have their risks. Some American officials believe that Russia's military is still making germ weapons at laboratories that remain closed to outsiders. And Moscow has continued to lie about its past biological efforts, even in the face of irrefutable evidence. But the gains of cooperation have been substantial. Intelligence officials acknowledge that much of what they have learned about the former Soviet program came from the open scientific exchanges arranged by Andy Weber and other officials. In April 2001, Weber and his colleagues were the first Westerners to visit a scientific institute in Kazan, the capital of Tatarstan, a previously unknown corner of the Soviet germ empire where scientists developed biological weapons to infect livestock.
And yet, in spite being so important, somehow the Wuhan cover-up book by Skyhorse Publishing and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. omitted any reference to Andrew Weber, as well as Joshua Lederberg, as well as William Hazeltine, as well as SAIC, as well as Winber Facility, as well as Sun Shung, as well as Viscal Corporation, and a variety of other things which I covered in a shorter episode 280.m, which you could think of as 280.missing.
Such scientific exchanges build relationships that cross borders, creating constraints even for authoritarian governments. As Dave Franz, the former head of germ defense at Fort Detrick, points out, a Russia in which key scientists correspond regularly by email with their Western counterparts will be less able to sustain a covert germ weapons program. The Clinton administration's belated investments in public health, basic research, disease surveillance, and stockpiling of antidotes make sense. They are likely to save lives even if the United States never faces a germ attack. Even so, America in some ways is less prepared today for an outbreak of deadly disease than it was a half-century ago. The largest hospital in the Dalles, Oregon, had 125 beds when the Rajneeshis struck in 1984. Today, it has 49. Some public health clinics lack microscopes, let alone computers or access to the internet. New York's experience with West Nile virus demonstrated the crucial role of the public health system in detecting and countering a germ outbreak, however it originates. A positive step would be the development of computerized systems that help epidemiologists track novel infectious diseases. There was significant waste in the Clinton years. Biological defense turned into an entitlement program for federal agencies, private contractors, and government consultants. While many projects were well-intentioned, the administration failed to give any single official the authority to eliminate duplications, enforce discipline, and direct the money to where it would do the most good. Although the president delivered 2 major addresses on the dangers of biological warfare, the administration never marshaled its resources to strengthen the germ treaty or to promote a coherent program of biodefense. Distracted by impeachment, the administration's attention to these issues was intense but episodic, a poor recipe for explaining a complex problem to the American people. It took Richard Danzig more than a year to persuade the Pentagon's commanders, an unusually well-informed group, to step up their responses to the germ threat. No one should expect Congress or the public to be more easily swayed. Programs like compulsory anthrax vaccinations must be explained in detail and candidly. The same is true of the intelligence agency's efforts to counter germ warfare. The 1972 treaty permits almost any kind of research in the name of defense. Some of this work is unquestionably justifiable. Other research edges closer to the blurriest of lines. We can imagine defensive research that a nation might legitimately keep secret, such as experiments exploring the vulnerabilities of existing vaccines. But American officials should disclose the existence of such research and its general outlines whenever possible. Few secrets are kept forever in a democracy, and the revelation of research into superbugs or the building of germ bomblets inevitably stirs deeper suspicions. The United States undermines the treaty it helped create and its own moral authority when it cloaks the most significant aspects of its defensive work in secrecy. The experts who met with President Clinton in 1998 urged him to create a panel of experts who would provide an independent assessment of this secret work. While the CIA during the Clinton administration did create such a committee, it met infrequently and lacked the clout, access, and mandate to review programs that were spread throughout the government. We believe that the experts were right. Such a committee with real powers of oversight would build confidence at home and abroad in America's biological agenda. A half-century ago, a group of eminent citizens warned James Forrestal, the first Secretary of Defense, that the United States was defenseless against germ attacks. But its recommendations for better intelligence, more research, drug stockpiles, and medical surveillance systems were largely ignored. Over the next 5 decades, a series of American presidents confronted the problem, considered various remedies, and shuffled the issue into the too hard box. Such denial is understandable. Biodefense has no natural political constituency in Washington. The military-industrial complex that supports weapons systems has little interest in vaccines and public health.
It should be noted that in 1949, James Forrestal was checked into a hospital for his declining mental health. He seemed to be on the road to recovery, having gained 12 pounds since his admission to the hospital, but in the early morning of May 22nd, 1949, his body, clad only in the bottom half of pajamas, was found on the 3rd-floor roof below the 16th-floor kitchen across the hall from the room. It appears as though he either committed suicide or was thrown from the building.
Plans should be prepared for the establishment of adequate laboratory and vaccine production facilities and stockpiles of essential basic medical supplies in the event the danger from enemy attack appears imminent, Forrestal's committee concluded in 1949. Prompt action should be taken to establish a civil defense program. Those words could have been written yesterday. The question is whether the United States will be able to wait another 50 years to act on them. If we as a nation believe that the germ threat is a hoax, we are spending too much money on it. But if the danger is real, as we conclude it is, then the investment is much too haphazard and diffuse. We remain woefully unprepared for a calamity that would be unlike any this country has ever experienced.
And we'll read that last sentence one more time. We remain woefully unprepared for a calamity that would be unlike any this country has ever experienced. That is the very last sentence of the book Germs. Published September 7th or 9th. I've gotten mixed answers to that, of the year 2001. Actually, only a couple dozen hours before September 11th, 2001. And I think it's beyond speculation right now. It's basically proven that the opportunity for a large-scale biological terror attack in a major U.S. metropolitan center was going to provide the excuse to advance gene therapy vaccines or DNA vaccines, which otherwise never would have been approved, and to most likely first use them on the United States military. And once again, going back to the beginning of the book, what was the very first sentence of the book? In the preface, which was omitted, by the way. In December of 1997, 6 years after the Persian Gulf War, the Pentagon announced that it had decided to vaccinate its 2.4 million soldiers and reservists against anthrax. So that's the very first sentence. And the very last sentence is, we remain unprepared for a calamity like none other. You almost could cut out the entire book and just use the first sentence and the last sentence as the summary. What could be more magnificent in a book that most people choose to ignore, are paid to ignore? I encourage you to stop giving money to anyone that takes money to ignore this book. Give it to your church. Give it to a homeless person. Burn it. Send it here if you want. Don't give it to the people that avoid the most important content out there. Okay. The book, by the way, includes extensive footnotes. They're available. I'm not going to be going over them now. This concludes episode 280.d and really the narration of the book. There are another 8 or 10 episodes which we made, which are deep dives on individual subjects. I'm going to start doing maybe a full day playback of all the videos, the full narration, along with the deep dives where they are appropriate, because I think the deep dives should actually be played at different points, suggested points along the way, to make the narration more complete, more accessible, and to provide a lot more insights than the book does in many cases. Also connecting some of those things to current events. And thank you for joining. I think this has been great. Stay tuned. Next book I think we're going to be doing doesn't sound quite as exciting, but I think technically, as far as DNA vaccines go, it's every bit as awesome. Big Shot AIDS vaccine, because this book was published the week after September 11th. And that's no accident. That means it was planned to be published on that date for a long time. Because, like the Germs book, it was getting people prepared for DNA vaccines. Thank you, guys. Take care. God bless.